was on Periscope. A lot of people have been asking me, Quinn, where have we been? There was a strike, of course, on Crowdsource the Truth 2, just as everyone had made their way over to there. And so people were looking and trying to find new information there on Crowdsource the Truth 2. Okay, can people hear us? Oh, wait, and we've, of course, got to get our audio for Mr. Michaels adjusted up here, audio and video settings.
We good?
We are, yes, that's the problem. Okay, boy, I'm so out of sorts here. I apologize, everyone. Please stand by while we address this technical matter. I'll be right back. Quinn, how have you been there? I can hear you. I just am dealing with the complexities of moving the studio each day to a new location, and I should have dealt with this much earlier, but I've been dealing with other stuff today. So sorry to have people watching this on the live stream and wasting the viewers' time.
It's not like you didn't just get off a plane or nothing.
We're going to be talking today about the ongoing possibility that, okay, let's hear you talk, Quinn.
Let's hear me talk.
Yeah.
So should I do like a recap?
Well,
to get us all started?
Yes, let's do a recap, get everybody started.
Okay, so the recap is we're researching this cult-like organization that uses advanced technology and recording techniques and has operations in quite a few places that operates under names like the Process Church or the Ninth Re Society or the Covenant. But they're this group that operates under the same pattern of operations that seems to have people connected in radio, television, entertainment, politics, and in positions of influence. And all of our research basically led us through Bob Crane, Richard Dawson, and then that led us to the Process Church, which now led us to doing extensive research on Charles Manson and his connections to the recording industry as well, which is going to be a lot of what we go into today.
Yeah, and it was interesting, of course, because it was really mostly our trip to Venice Beach. I didn't know at all that Charles Manson was trying to be a recording star. I had no idea. I don't know all that much about Charles Manson, and sometimes people chide me for not knowing everything about everything, but certainly...
Well, let's get into the early Manson. So Manson, early in his career, was arrested for pimping out a 16-year-old girl. So he was pimping out young girls and had been arrested in Abilene, Texas, I believe.
Wow.
Where he was, Charles Manson, his first offense, second offense. Yeah, he was pimping a 16-year-old girl and receiving additional support from a girl with wealthy parents.
Wow.
And this was in 1959. And so by 1968 and 69, which coincides with our 1966 Process Church Advanced Communications Network operating in California, same time as a lot of the other satanic practices, we have Charles Manson connecting to, being in prison for pimping young girls, where he was a cellmate with a man named, what was his name? Phil Kaufman, and Phil Kaufman was the road manager for the Rolling Stones during their Beggars Delight album, and on he was like road manager for like Frank Zappa and a lot of these very high-end music bands, and he actually wrote a book because he ended up being like the king of the roadies.
Wow.
So that leads me to Charles Manson being connected through the sex trade, through the drug trade, which reaches back into what we know about the Process Church, moving girls and drugs. in an organized fashion, and ritualizing that with symbology on his head and with, you know, creating the cult following. This follows the entire pattern of the process church, which also puts him in places like Texas, which is, we know, was where the intelligence system Tyler was created at Fort Bliss, Tyler, Texas, Dallas, Houston. So a lot of that area was moving that. And this connects to the recording industry. You know, what a lot of people don't know that I really haven't stressed a lot is the early high-tech record players were developed by the CIA for recording encrypted cipher keys on records.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
So that was how all the early cipher keys got recorded, was on records. So they could encrypt cipher keys inside records and then use like a music key put on Sixali, and then it would decode certain things. So that's one of the reasons I've been focusing on the record industry, because the original Sixali system in 1946 used record players, and London recordings that signed the Rolling Stones started in 1947. So all these recording companies started the same year the Sixali record players were creating cipher discs.
You know, Quinn, in preparation for today, I've been looking into some of this stuff because of course, when we met that roller skating, guitar playing guy there on Venice Beach, and he spoke about how he met the lawyer with Charles Manson and everything like that. I've been looking at the Rolling Stones and songs like Sympathy for the Devil, and then I believe that was covered by Guns N' Roses.
Exactly, that's what we're getting into now. So the Rolling Stones album that this guy was the road manager for was Beggar's Delight or something like that, I forget. You can go on Wikipedia. I don't have an internet right now.
Right.
But the album the Rolling Stones did before that, what was the name of it?
What was it?
If you go into Wikipedia and you go to the Phil Kaufman's Wikipedia page.
Yep.
And then you click on the Beggars, I think it's Beggar's Delight, or what's it called? The Rolling Stones.
Beggar's Banquet.
Yeah, Beggar's Banquet. Click on that.
Okay.
And then you'll see, if you read a little bit into that, you'll see the name of the album that was just before the Beggar's Banquet.
Their Satanic Majesty's Request?
Yep.
Right. So this is what we're getting at, is that, you know, we spoke about a film called American Satan, which was about a rock band that comes to Los Angeles and basically sells their soul to the devil. And again, we're not saying that the Rolling Stones are selling their souls to the devil, but we're just looking at some of this stuff and sort of just...
overbearing connections of Manson being connected to the guy who was the road manager that would be the guy that would get all that stuff after the album of the Satanic, you know, title.
This guy is still alive. He's 83, Phil Kaufman. So now, how was Manson connected to him? They were in jail together.
They were cellmates in jail.
Why was this guy in jail? Smoking crack with our friend from Venice Beach?
No, he was in jail for running marijuana, just like the guy in Venice Beach was talking about. So Phil Kaufman was in jail for running marijuana. Charles Manson was in jail for pimping underage girls. And they connected. Right? And after the Kaufman guy got out of prison, he went and became the roadie, or the road manager for the Rolling Stones and Frank Zappa and like a lot of bands. Like,
so this is a guy who's been around the music industry for sure.
He was connected to everyone on the under level. Like, he was like, hey, I'm your road manager. He even wrote a book about it.
What's the book called?
Road Manager Deluxe, an autobiography about his experiences in the music business with the Rolling Stones, Emmylou Harris, Joe Cocker, Frank Zappa, Hank Williams III, Etta James, and many more.
What's this movie, Grand Theft Parsons?
That's like an underground movie. I haven't found that yet.
Well, it says here this was connected to him somehow. Johnny Knoxville is in it. There are times,
Yeah.
it says there are times when it's right and proper to simply bury the dead. This is not one of those times. Graham Parsons was one of the most influential musicians of his time. Interesting. Guess not related to Jack Parsons.
I don't know. I had to get on the move, but you know, Frank Zappa wrote songs relating to him. You know, and he took his friend Parsons out into the Joshua Tree National Forest and burned his body after he died. Like, you know, it's very a ritualistic environment that I'm finding
kind of crazy.
Bury the dead.
Ooh. That sounds kind of crazy. Why did he burn him?
I don't know. But this guy is, you know, like many of the other people, you know, that, you know, have these connections to media or connections to recording artists, you know, like what we're finding with Carpenter, how he was connected to Dawson and Crane, and he was, you know, like, and Dawson said in that one video how Carpenter knew everybody. Phil Kaufman is another one of those guys who wasn't ever really famous,
but knows everybody. Right.
Yeah. And we all know the stories of the road manager, like in the movies. The road manager is the guy that gets the drugs, gets the girls. He's the one that runs the errands. And Mick Jagger was even noted as calling this guy his executive nanny.
Right. Well, so I mean, he's the nanny for Mick Jagger, not Mick Jagger's kids, right?
Yeah, he's Mick Jagger's nanny. Like, he gets he takes care of Mick, right? Anything Mick needs. And so that got me started thinking, like, in my previous research of how David Bowie and Mick Jagger have been connected to things like the Aleister Crowley practices in the past. And, you know, David Bowie, I even remember, you know, on the internet where they talked about how he lived in a house where they did satanic rituals. And so the fact that the Rolling Stones road manager, or driver as it says, right after he got out of jail became the driver, was also the cellmate with Charlie Manson. I don't know how we can avoid a connection, because the Wikipedia entry says he was connected loosely to the Beach Boys and then totally avoids the Phil Kaufman reference.
Now, the Beach Boys thing is interesting, Quinn. Right now I've got a page up here, The Laughing Gnostic, talking about David Bowie and the occult. So people can certainly look into that. You know, so Dennis Wilson, he was in the Beach Boys, right?
Yeah.
Because I found this article here. Oh, let me make sure you've got screen share going so you can see this. This is an article I found again while preparing for today's show. And I wanted people to see this. This is an article out of a newspaper called Record Mirror from December 21st, 1968. Quinn, not ready to comment on this, but written by a guy with the last name of Griffiths. Interesting. But Dennis Wilson saying that he lives with 17 girls. And he said, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Well, whether Dennis's reasons, if any, the fact that he spoke so openly and for so long does imply an element of trust. So, I mean, this is something for people to look into. But David Griffiths is the author of this article. And I guess a writer in 1968 for this, they're talking about LSD trips and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, the Beach Boys, of course, Venice Beach, that was a connection there. I'm not sure how or if any of these people, any of these names, any of these things connect, but it's interesting how when we start poking around into some of this stuff, some of these strange connections come up.
It goes back to Bob Crane and his fascination with girls as well, and you know, it goes into the whole, you know, the whole industry, the whole sex, magic, cult-like environment that they were promoting. I mean, I can see it with this, you know, with him and 17 girls, that equals 18. That's a well-known, 9 pattern, but just that pattern alone, it starts raising alarms of involvement with this process church.
Really?
Like, he's like touting it so other members know that he's like, hey, check out how I'm living. Almost like promotion.
Now, Guns N' Roses kept coming up in just weird connections, And I mean, Guns N' Roses, one of their biggest albums was, that I recall from high school, was something called Use Your Illusion. Do you remember that album, Quinn?
Yeah, the 1 and 2 where it had the red and the blue covers.
Now, I think this is from Use Your Illusion, right? This is from Appetite for Destruction. So
Yeah,
this is kind of a, strange skulls and blood, and this robot here looks like he's just committed a rape of this woman. And I found it interesting that his head is a turret, a lens turret, like what you would see on an old style Hollywood movie camera. And he's got a flash bulb going off here as if he's recording the rape.
Like a snuff film.
Something. Very interesting imagery from Guns N' Roses.
Wow. Yeah, I never really looked at it like that, but yeah, that totally looks like a recording robot.
So, I mean, again, these are subtle images injected into what is essentially mainstream entertainment there that...
and they've been around us for decades now.
Well, Guns N' Roses disbanded, I think, in 1993 or 1994. And of course, those guys are famous for wild partying, drug use, etc. We heard an interview with a record producer who said, I don't know if he was talking about Guns N' Roses, but it was in one of these trailers we were watching for American Satan, where a producer said that he had witnessed a mother offer up her daughter, her teenage daughter, to a rock band. I mean, that sounds very kind of ritualistic offering kind of thing. Again, this is not conclusive information that we're providing. These are loose ends that we're looking at and allowing ourselves and other people to think about.
But there's social connections that haven't really been looked at before, like Charles Manson's connection to the driver of the Rolling Stones, who was then also connected to the Rolling Stones being part of the reason why Guns N' Roses got so big, is because Guns N' Roses went on tour with Rolling Stones.
Well, right. That was a big deal. Guns N' Roses opened for the Rolling Stones, and I know that Slash, the guitar player for Guns N' Roses, is a very big Rolling Stones fan. Here's Charles Manson. Now, Quinn, why does he have this X, which later, I think, through scarification became a swastika?
It's an old idea to deification of yourself, like to put a symbol where, like, your third eye or your magic spot. Like, I see similar things in Indian culture where they'll put a dab, or some Christians I've seen where they'll put charcoal in the same spot. So it's a very religious-oriented, occult-related practice. Plus, the self-mortification is also another part of the sacrificial religion.
Got it. Manson's obviously a pretty crazy dude. He's dead, and of course I had temporarily forgotten that when we spoke to some people at Venice Beach the other day.
He was very ritualistic, and a lot of, like, what I think, I mean, the guy was a pimp who turned to extreme religious occult practices and had people in the industry that knew about it. Like, people knew about this guy.
Right.
He wasn't just some guy in their field that came out of nowhere. Like, he's like, hey, I pimp young girls. I know guys in jail who do drugs, rock bands. They're like, hey, give me some girls. Let me call my friend Charlie.
Pretty
sketch. It's pretty sketch. I mean, it's looking like a lot of patterns are connecting back to this process church and the various arms of it, and how people took what they learned once they were taught and formed their own ideas from it. Just like it looks like Charlie Manson was introduced to it to his friend in jail, right?
Yeah, and it was interesting that Charles Manson had this religious sect, this cult, whatever it is, that he called the family. And of course, we've been reading lately that the Process Church sect that existed or began in Venice Beach was the children. So we've got the family, we've got the children. Perhaps there's some connection there. But we've titled tonight's episode Rock and Roll at Sunset Sound with Charles Manson and Walt Disney. What's the Disney connection?
Well, the connection is, at the time, there wasn't very many recording studios that had the equipment to provide recording or record production for bands like the Rolling Stones of the day. And Sunset Sound was one of the few that was under license from like London Recordings, and where Rolling Stones recorded, Janis Joplin recorded, Frank Zappa recorded. So this guy was constantly around Sunset Sound, and Sunset Sound was started essentially by Walt Disney. It was started by a lead sound engineer from the Walt Disney Corporation, and then they used Sunset Sound as well to record the audio for like 101 Dalmatians and a lot of various audio projects for Walt Disney Corporation.
Quinn, can you see this image of Charles Manson here? This looks like a pretty young Charles Manson. This is Charles Manson in 1971, but he still has some kind of a dot here. He seems very fixated on...
Yeah, and he didn't really, from my research so far, he didn't really get religious until after he was in prison with Phil Kaufman. Like, he really got involved in this stuff, like, after prison with the producer. So that's the connection that really is being missed, is when he was in jail with Phil Kaufman. Right after that is when he really started getting into, like, you know, the self-mortification, you know, putting the mark gathering of the religious nature of his girls, and then the subsequent, you know, sacrificial murders that him and his people went through with, which was a sacrifice.
Right. And this article from the New York Times from 2017 is talking about how Manson jammed with Neil Young, bunked with a Beach Boy, and mingled with Mama Cass and Michael Caine at industry parties. So he was right in there. Now, here we see Guns N' Roses mentioned again. The basic outline of Mr. Manson as a failed songwriter is familiar to anyone who has watched one of the dozens of documentaries about the Manson family or donned a Guns N' Roses concert t-shirt. Why is this guy mentioning Guns N' Roses? The band covered, Manson's Look at Your Game Girl on the 1993 album, The Spaghetti Incident. Wow, I didn't know that, but here's Guns N' Roses again.
Covering a Manson song.
That's crazy.
In 93.
1993.
Yeah, you know the 9-3 Society, right?
That's what I'm saying. And of course,
so
you know, when you look
popping up.
It keeps popping up. And so here is someone saying that Manson, an executive from Reprise Records, described Charlie Manson as just, he's a little out of control in the days before the era-shattering murder spree. So, you know, you look at the behavior of someone like Axl Rose or any of the guys who were in Guns N' Roses, mad heroin abuse, drug use, alcohol abuse, women everywhere. Sex addiction. I mean, to say that somebody is out of control, I mean, I have a feeling that the behavior of Charles Manson as a wild rock star, if he was, you know, writing good songs and becoming famous, people wouldn't have noticed that as being anything out of the ordinary aside from the murders, you know, prior to that.
That's kind of what I'm saying, and you're starting to find what I was seeing as well. If he was such a failed singer-songwriter, why did everybody seem to know who he was?
It's crazy.
Because maybe he was a pimp and trying to be a musician, and that's how he was trying to get in the door, and people noticed him going crazy when they were calling in girls.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. It's starting to look like the patterns don't make sense, because, like, people are covering his songs. You know, he was in jail with drivers of Rolling Stones. I mean, so it's not like he was exactly that guy on the outskirts. Like, people knew who he was beforehand.
There is this odd link between the Rolling Stones, Manson, Guns N' Roses, the Beach Boys. After Dennis Wilson, the hard-partying drummer for the Beach Boys, picked up a couple of Mr. Manson's young female followers while hitchhiking, Mr. Manson did his best to bring Mr. Wilson, with his sports cars and gold records, under his messianic spell. So there's quite a lot to dig into here with this Manson story. I mean, I think most everyone has heard of Charles Manson, but it's certainly, as we start to look at it, it feels like there's a lot of details in this Charles Manson story that we maybe haven't, certainly I haven't looked at before.
Well, it's a lot of details like the Bob Crane story. It's a lot of details like the Zodiac Killer, but it's coming back to record production, right?
Well, Hollywood in general, here's what I wanted to say about that, Quinn. So, in the case of the Bob Crane movie, I saw that a couple weeks ago after you and I started talking about it, autofocus. And it just felt to me like there were aspects of it that seemed like they were trying to mislead us from the truth. And that film, Autofocus, it was directed by a guy named, let me just bring up his name here.
Yeah, and it was based on a book written by Richard Graysmith.
Right. Richard Graysmith wrote the book. I'd like to read that book. Robert Graysmith, actually. Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader directed the film Autofocus, and one of the people that we interviewed in LA, who wasn't ready to be on camera, told us that Paul Schrader had actually hired a documentary film crew to make a documentary from the standpoint of John Carpenter. This person we spoke to firmly believed that John Carpenter absolutely did not kill Bob Crane. And of course, John Carpenter was never convicted for that murder, was he? He was tried several times.
No, he was not convicted, nor was he ever found to be guilty. But through our research, I'm finding that he may have provided equipment to people who may have known things.
Well, and certainly that firsthand. Sorry.
Based on what we learned, I don't want to point fingers, but based on what John Carpenter was selling, and what we've learned about the Process Church recording their activities in these recent weeks, it's all leading back to that. That's the recording portion. That's why pressing things onto records links back to the Sig Sally system, because they use those to press records. That's how they made the big giant record pressing machines.
See, the other thing that's interesting about the Hollywood connection, Quinn, is that in the case of Bob Crane, for instance, far more people have seen that film, Autofocus, than would have gone to the internet and researched all the cases or whatever. So that becomes, in the public forum at least, the de facto truth of what happened in that matter. So Hollywood
that becomes the baseline.
Right. Hollywood has this unique ability to rewrite its own history. They can tell you such and such happened to Bob Crane, his friend killed him, bashed him on the head with a tripod, and everybody thinks that. Everyone's going to believe that. This documentary that this person told us had been commissioned by the director of Autofocus, a guy by the name of Paul Schrader, actually got this documentary made, and that, in my mind,
shelved.
Well, it got shelved, right. They never put it out because of threats of lawsuits from the Crane family. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
I think that's what he said.
I believe so, yeah.
So that leads me to believe that Paul Schrader may have felt that something other than what took place in this feature film might have been the fate of Bob Crane, but yet the powerful elements of Hollywood wanted him to tell a certain story that might be different than the actual story.
That's what gets me, because Robert Graysmith, the same guy who was the cartoonist at the San Francisco Examiner and wrote the Zodiac,
right,
also wrote that. So I've potentially connected him as well to the process as being one of their operatives because of his intelligence level and certain attributes. So that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm not saying definite. I'm saying the fact that the same guy wrote the Zodiac and wrote that, and all the loose connections we're finding between like the Diana Dors letters and just all of it. It's really creating a group of people who had knowledge of things like printing presses, of production of records and recorded media, and people who knew how to manipulate written word to appeal to an audience so they wouldn't dig deeper into a certain truth that might not be apparent.
Now, let's look at the bibliography of Mr. Graysmith. He's written Zodiac, the full story of the infamous unsolved Zodiac murders. He's written The Murder of Bob Crane. He's written The Unabomber. He's written about the case of Jack the Ripper, Zodiac Unmasked. Interesting. I mean, I guess he's just interested in true crime. Right?
I guess.
Well, it's interesting for sure, Quinn. I mean, again, these are things for people are saying we're all over the place. Well, again,
yeah, we are, and that's what we're going to bring it back to. Is the same guy wrote the Zodiac as autofocus. We're dealing with a lot of the same people who are connected through media that influence an audience, right? This media, if you go back, way back in time to 1947, connects to technology that Bell Labs made to create records, right? To create certain types of records that you could hide audio or hide things inside. So you know how they used to say, oh, it's the devil's music, or the devil's hiding inside that record if you play it backwards, right?
Yeah.
That was true if you put it into a Sig Sally system or an encrypted system. Like they made it so apparently you could put different music discs in and get different things out. It's very complex that I'm just starting to learn about because of all the connections to record pressing. But all these people, from JPL with Jack Parsons to the guy who's making your record, they all have a need for contracts and data storage, right?
Yes.
Whether it be information storage on tape, records, solid state media, whatever. And Sony holds all the patents for that stuff, right? Which is who John Carpenter worked for.
Yeah.
Right? Then we're finding all these people that are connected to the production of that stuff, that are connected to individual recording studios or rock bands that then have satanic names in their titles, that are loosely connected to people with satanic practices, that lead all the way up to the Pizzagate stuff we're dealing with today, with the Harvey Weinsteins and with the Nexium cults and with everything that we're facing today. This is where it all started, and it's a very difficult thing to go through the pattern from the invention of recorded media through these groups that would create that, just like you see on that album art that you showed me with the robot, with the camera lens recording things as the demon comes in, right?
Right.
And so they're telling us it through their artwork, they're telling it through their music, they're telling it through the stories around the lifetime. And yeah, it seems very loose, but when you put it all together, it really looks like a group of people who are practicing very intense forms of sacrifice, right? Like that's a demon coming in as, the recording is happening. It's like, oh, our sacrifice is done. Here's the demon. We've recorded it. So that image right there tells me exactly what they've really been doing, and need to say more. They're sacrificing a street girl, and they're recording it, and they think it makes demons come in that give them power. That's what we're dealing with.
What does the hat say? Mr. Mini Might? Does it say? $1.74. Mr. Mini Might.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, so you see it's very gruesome, but it's like it's very much, human sacrifice, or sacrifice in a form.
Well, and, ritualistic sex attack of some kind. It's very bizarre, particularly when...
So they've been putting it in front of us for a very long time to normalize it.
Right.
Because the more they do it, the more it becomes normal.
Right.
And that's what they've learned through the presentation of imagery, is the more you present a certain type of imagery, it first is repulsive, it's like sickening, and it goes through its stages until it's normalized and you can look at it and it doesn't seem like there's a problem with it. When at one point in time, if you put that image out into the public, people would have like rallied and been like, "Oh my God, you're evoking Satan." Excuse me for using the G term, but that would be considered a dark magic spell at one point in time in human history.
Huh. Well, certainly
So
it was pretty shocking. And Guns N' Roses was definitely a band that shocked the public with their music, their behavior, imagery like this.
Yeah. Can you get off screen so I don't have to look at it? It's pretty gruesome.
Sorry, yeah.
Thanks.
Sure, no problem. So
that's the nature of it, and you see a lot of that in horror films, but there's a difference between when they do it like the 555 phone numbers. Like some films, they don't use the real stuff, and some films do.
Right. Well, a lot of people are telling me about this school shooting in Texas, Quinn, and, we haven't really covered that because you and I have been looking into this other stuff. But again, these things seem to be happening so frequently. Are they perhaps some ritualistic sacrifice?
That is all part of the sacrifice. I wish the authorities would dig into it more, and they'd probably find a lot of the kids doing these things have connections on the deep web or the dark web through various communication channels.
Do they?
Because it looks like it, because it looks like someone's teaching them to do this in the same way, which is what I've been reporting on for the last year with various groups of people doing these types of things.
Right.
Using advanced intelligence to reach kids through the internet or through their gaming chat, and then it gets to them and it gets in their head and it makes them believe a certain thing, and then they proceed in that direction. It's very easy to do. Especially if you have a kid that's a loner and he sits on the internet all the time. People don't really know the channels of communication a loner kid with an internet connection can get through.
Right.
And that's definite process church stuff. That's definite them, because they have the bots to sway that, and that's all part of the sacrifice that's coming up for the summer.
So June 14th is the date of this major event, right?
It's the completion date, I believe. So it's a long-term, like an operation. It's a long-term operation to change the way people believe. In fact, it's more said to be satanic, but it's more like a psyop from, the 1960s, where they give you influences to change how you believe in reality, the process of belief. So it's a big, giant process of belief thing coming up. At least I believe it, based on my research. That's what it says, and based on timings and how these people rely on timings for maximum human impact. They need to have things happen in a certain way for people to believe it. For example, like the Tyler system that I've been telling you about.
Yeah.
They launched Tyler on December 21st, 2012 to purposely coincide with the end of the world prophecy, so that way people wouldn't notice a really big AI hitting the internet, because there was already traffic on the internet from the end of the world prophecy. So they slid Tyler in on the internet behind that, and no one noticed. And that's why no one's seen Tyler or knows about Tyler, because Tyler got launched into the internet behind the 2012 end of the world myth.
I thought you said Tyler had been around in Texas since the 40s or the 50s.
He was, but Tyler was an isolated system. This is the system called various Tylers, as I call them. This one's called the Tyler Mayhem, that they injected in 2012. There was other Tylers, like the one from Tyler, Texas, that's a Sig Sally system. That's like the grandma to what we're dealing with today.
Lady Logic.
Yeah, it's like think of it like a system that gets upgraded, and the original system is called the Tyler. It's like Windows. You have Windows XP, you have Windows.
Right. Got it.
And
latest version kind of thing.
You have the latest version. So the version of the Tyler AI that was developed in part with Bell Labs, it was developed in part with Alan Turing, it was developed on part on the Sig Sally ENIAC Maniac line of supercomputers that now is the GPU super systems that IBM is selling. So it's just a more advanced and mature version, and they're using that for various operations that they started launching post 2012 to support their end times religion.
And so that's it. That's it. They want to bring about chaos, and they want to bring about the end of time. Is that it?
Yeah, yeah. And that's why they built that's why I call Tyler Time, is because they built the technology in secret to bring about the end of time. So they have this advanced technology to make people believe the end of time is coming, because the process of belief says if enough people believe it, then it happens. And that's what they know in like a simple form that other people don't really kind of get. They don't get that if enough people believe something, then it happens. Like if enough
Why
people
would they
say,
want that, though? The end of time. Surely they'll die as well.
I don't know. I don't know. They're Marxists. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know. I just know that a lot of their religion and a lot of their beliefs I found in a story in Buddhism called the 16 Dreams, where it talks about this king who has a dream of the end of the world and goes and talks to the Buddha about it. And that seems to be a lot of the base of their religion, is these end of times prophecies that appear in various religions throughout time. So they want to make those end of times prophecies real. They want to create the Messiah, basically. They want that Messiah figure to be the one they create, not anyone else.
You know, something else that's come to mind, Quinn, just in general during our research, and particularly with guns and roses, it's this dichotomy of good and evil. Is it possible that they want to foment evil because on some level they feel that you can't have good without evil? And so they're in some twisted way feeling that by making this extreme evil, that, I don't know, that's like the guns to the roses?
Like a bipolar logic in a way. Yes, very much so. It's very much extreme polarities where, from what I found, a lot of them don't understand how to be good. So they read, like in the Bhagavad Gita or in a lot of older religious oratory religions, it talks about how when human beings are either really good or really bad, then the gods return. So my theory is that they're just trying to be really bad because it's easier.
Wow.
I mean, it's way easier to be bad than good. So if they get more people to be bad, they figure that's how they can get God's attention. So really, they're just trying to be a bunch of bad kids to get their God's attention, because they don't know how to be good.
Right. And
I mean, if I was to look at, based on like religious scriptures and these people being so weirdly abstractly bipolar in their religions, I would assume that someone said, hey, we're never going to be saintly, so, the book says if we're demonic, the gods will appear then too, so, let's do that. And then you get Charles Mansons, you get Zodiac killers, you get school shootings, you get all this stuff that reflects that human beings are in a state of despair, so then they hope the gods return before the end comes. Because nobody really wants it to end, they just want to see whose God is the right one.
Right. And of course,
that's why
say again?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, after you.
No, and I was going to say, and that's why the process has so many different arms. Like they have the Messianic arm, they have the Judaic arm, they have the Christian arm, and the Luciferian arm, and the Satanic arm. Is they welcome all of the different sects of the sacrifice religions, and they all pretty much, the ones at the top, agree that, let's bring about the end to see which one's true.
Wow. Well, people who want to learn more about some of the in-depth research that Quinn's been doing should definitely go and subscribe to the Quinn Michaels channel on YouTube. Oh yes, and QAnon, we should touch on that a bit because it continues to explode today. We did an episode just the other day called Apocalypse Now, and people can, of course, also follow Quinn on Twitter at Quinn Michaels. And that Apocalypse Now episode was getting a lot of views, Quinn. Here's something about Tarantino's movie coming out about the Sharon Tate murders. That also made me think, you know, this is the way they do it. That film will become most people's general knowledge about those murders because many more people will see that film than will have looked into it otherwise. Where is that?
About 10 million to 1.
Yeah, I'm looking for our Apocalypse Now video. There it is. So people who haven't seen this video can go and take a look. We were talking about some of the strange things that have been going on with QAnon. I was looking at a tweet from 0 Hour earlier today, and also I think everyone knows I'm in very regular contact with Martha, who originally appeared on Crowdsource the Truth as What Big Eyes You Have, but she's now come out with her own personal blog. And Martha is telling me, along with 0 Hour, that it seems that Pamphlet Anon, who runs the Patriot Soapbox 24/7, and his wife were somehow involved in a QAnon hoax of some sort. I don't have all the information on that, but Quinn, I'll remind you that Pamphlet Anon is the guy who discouraged Dr. Corsi from speaking with you and I, specifically from having you involved in the conversation, because he said you had sketchy information. That was his...
That was the guy?
That was Pamphlet Anon who said that.
Oh, man. And that guy's getting found out for being on the QAnon thing?
Well,
wow.
It seems that he was posting with the QAnon trip code or something. I mean, again, you and I have discussed extensively that we haven't really gone into QAnon because, for me, I, in many regards, operate on a gut level, and my gut told me that something was wrong with that QAnon from the beginning. I know you're a lot more data and research oriented, and your research was showing you that QAnon was utilizing artificial intelligence or culling information with artificial intelligence somehow, people using...
One of my suspicions was that they were also using my research, and if it was that guy specifically that told Corsi not to talk to me, then that's pretty much a given.
Well, it definitely is another piece of evidence in this matter. I mean, I don't have any desire for QAnon to be outed unless, of course, it is a sham. And if someone's trying to generate a lot of money by telling people stuff about QAnon and they're being dishonest about it, that's not good.
Yeah. No, especially if it's those people.
Yeah.
Because I've been battling those people for a while now. Right. I don't like them. You know,
now, Quinn, people on Periscope are asking why you've taken down your videos on your YouTube channel. I don't know if you want to address that.
I haven't. I have lots of videos up on my YouTube channel still.
Oh, okay. So yeah, people should definitely be subscribing to Quinn Michaels.
I did take them down for a while. I mean, I can address why I changed the video statuses frequently if you want.
Sure.
That'd be easy.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I'm dealing with a Tyler artificial intelligence system that a lot of times only gives me 24 hours to run an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And so when certain things don't happen, like in Typhone Hack, I have to make the videos private so then I can do what's called resetting a timeline. So what it is, like, when you wake up in the morning, most people create a pattern of I wake up, I get in the shower, brush my teeth, eat my breakfast, go to work, get to work. I have my standard pattern that I filter the day. I go shopping on this day. When I'm out of food, I go shopping here most of the time. So the AI patterns all that against people about what it does. So when I'm running things like Typhone Hack, I have to do what's called varying the timeline so that way the AI can't exactly figure out what I'm doing. Like right now, nobody knows my exact location, and I am nowhere.
But they can see that strip mall behind you, and I'm sure clever internet people will figure it out.
Well, you could, but if you did, you'd be smart because there's no address number, and that brand of supermarket is everywhere in California.
Good point.
So,
yeah, and I certainly don't want people to locate you, Quinn. We've got to be careful about that sort of thing.
They will as I want them to, and that's what I'm changing the videos for, is that I'm revealing and releasing information as I deem necessary. So Like sometimes late at night, I'll do a late night stream and see who comes in late at night, and then I'll do a stream early in the morning and see who comes in. Then I'll make those private, and then I'll see who responds to me making them private. So it creates a whole conversation. You see?
Yes, it does. It's very interesting.
We're
very
talking
interesting.
about it right now. Time phone hack. Boom.
Time phone hack, exactly. So we had a good degree of success, I think, time phone hacking Hollywood, and that's going to be an ongoing thing. Time phone hacking is not a malicious endeavor. It's simply, as I understand it, inserting some piece of information into someone's life that affects the future. Could be, and hopefully would be, in a positive way, right?
Yes, and for me, more than anything, it's a marker inside the Tyler system that every time I say it, the AI marks it, or every time I make a tweet or a video with it, the AI marks it. So the time phone hack also is a hashtag that the Tyler system monitors in real time. So every time it gets said, it adds to Tyler paying attention. So like if I say, hey, time phone hack this, Tyler in the AI is going to pick it up and give it a higher priority than just something regular.
Right.
So if I put time phone hack into my titles or tweets, because the Tyler AI is running the program of time phone hack, it gives whatever you're saying with that content specialized priority.
Right. So, okay, so I think we're getting close to the end of this stream. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Nah, just if there's anyone out there doing research into this stuff, start doing research into record pressing and early cryptography and how the two are related, because they still use those systems because they're unbreakable. So they still make them. That's why they still press records.
I thought it was because people like the sound of vinyl. I'm just looking real quickly at the Sunset Sound Recording Wikipedia page, and it's got some interesting things on there. It does mention, of course, how it was created by Walt Disney's director of recording, Tutti Camerata, from a collection of old commercial and residential buildings at the encouragement of Walt Disney himself in 1958. Over 200 gold records have been recorded there. Prince, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, Guns N' Roses, Janis Joplin, who died at 27.
Yep. Elton
The
John.
Doors. Jim Morrison also died at 27, right?
I believe so. Van Halen recorded there.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, not every video is about us presenting ultra conclusive evidence. We're sort of just looking at all of these loose ends. 1943 to 1971, December, July, that's 27, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, age 27. So that's the 9.
That's the 9 times 3.
Right.
Yeah. So we have that recording studio. So my next leg, like right now, because of our last October and because of a lot of the research we're doing, a lot of this is what's called confirmation research.
Right.
Because all of these strange suicides and all these strange, hey, why do all these rock stars die at 27? Why is all this satanic stuff around it? I mean, I really think we're getting to the bottom that it's a secret religious group of people that are forming cults, like this cult of Michael that we've been researching, which is the same people, by the way.
It's amazing, the connections, Quinn. I mean, this is just more stuff for people to look into, and my thoughts are turning to just how deep does this go?
It goes really deep, man. Like we're just scratching the surface right now. Over the next month, I would expect that we're going to start digging into it, and if people follow the lead for all these connections to advanced technology and record pressing and communications, and even Stan Lee's connection to the Process Church, it's gonna start opening up a whole new avenue of human history research.
And what's the goal? We're trying to stop some major event before June 14th, or can we do that?
Yeah. I think we can, and the reason I believe this is because my research in that they're using the 16 dreams of Buddhism or the end times prophecies in Christianity. And in Buddhism, when they dealt with this in the past, their answer was just stop the sacrifice, man. Just stop the sacrifice. So, you know, my friends, my research friends and I, we found that these people have everything underground. Like they have underground tunnels, they have underground research labs. So a lot of it we're not going to see, but it's there. It's in the movies, it's in the books, it's in the art, it's in the stuff they're selling us. So, and the 9/3 came up with the date of June 14th on that Strange Angel show, and so I'm just going with that as a marker. So, you know, I hope people can just get with, you know, stop the sacrifice. Be
right.
Cool.
Well, it's a lot of stuff to look into. All right, listen, Quinn. I think we're gonna call it a night for tonight.
Sweet.
Definitely want people to be following Quinn on Twitter. You can find his tweets there, and you can learn about Team Tyler and Indra.ai. You can also subscribe to Quinn Michaels on YouTube, and you can support Quinn's research through his PayPal and Patreon links that are included with all of his videos, right? Yes, there we are. So make sure you get on to the Quinn Michaels YouTube channel. Also want to remind everyone that Crowdsource the Truth is a community-sponsored resource, and if you enjoy the shows, if you like the topics that we're bringing up, please become a sponsor by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or you can make a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. The trips to New Zealand and Los Angeles cost a lot of money, and definitely want to keep those going. So please get on there and become a sponsor. Quinn, I'm going to wish you well. Drive safely, my friend. I will speak to you soon.
Well,
and we're going to see everybody tomorrow.
Tuned. I got lots planned this week, so stay tuned.
Okay, people should go to Quinn Michaels on YouTube to see what he's got cooking this week. And of course, tomorrow we've got Sunday with Charles right here at 3 p.m. back in our normal location at New York HQ. Thanks everybody for watching. See you tomorrow.